breaking SCOTUS ruling. SCOTUS ruled by a 5-4 vote to allow Border Patrol agents to cut the razor wire that Texas has installed on the southern border. Now, this is while the lawsuit is pending, but you see in here, I mean, we've talked about it at great length on this show. You're watching these people just crossing right over, and instead of actually doing their job, which is to protect the border, well, I guess, you know, I'll give it to them. Border Patrol, that name doesn't really indicate whether or not they're supposed to be strong about not letting people in. It does indicate that they're supposed to patrol it. So they are there.
Right.
They are watching what's going on. They're just like fist bumping illegal immigrants as they enter into the interior of the country. So it was Chief Justice John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett who sided with the liberals to shut down Texas's attempt to keep our border secure. I understand this is for the pending big ruling, okay? I cannot fathom why Amy Coney Barrett and, I mean, I guess maybe Roberts, because I don't put any stake in anything that he has to say. But I just don't get it. This should be such a clear-cut thing. Of course, Texas has an opportunity to defend and protect our border. If the federal government isn't doing it, we're just left at their mercy because they've chosen not to extend that into literally any other crime. I don't understand how you could possibly make this determination, but there it is. And now, while we wait for SCOTUS to hear the larger case, we just get to keep letting all of these people in unvetted.
Sounds kind of exciting. We've been dealing with that, of course, for a very long time here in Texas. And now some people up in the Northeast and other big cities have started to feel a little bit of that and panicked, right? Because they know it's a big issue and it's hard to deal with. It's kind of weird to watch this happen. I mean, on one hand, you can argue this is a process decision by the Supreme Court. I don't agree with it, of course, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're arguing against Texas's right to defend themselves. But it does make us more vulnerable for an extended period of time for no really good reason. And it also, makes you nervous about Amy Coney Barrett. I mean, John Roberts is a lost cause, has been a lost cause for a long time. Occasionally he'll be right on an issue, but you never expect it. That's why it's important we have 6, right, not 5. And, you're going to lose Roberts on almost every important issue.
Right.
I mean, that's just what's going to happen. Look, I've been skeptical, really outwardly skeptical of Kavanaugh already. He's made me very nervous. Gorsuch has had a couple of bad decisions, and now Amy Coney Barrett is on this side here. Hopefully, this isn't an indication of what's to come. But I mean, I would say one of the premier arguments for Donald Trump coming back into the White House would be those 3 picks, and we have. It doesn't seem like we got a Clarence Thomas out of that group. It doesn't seem like we got an Alito out of that group. It doesn't seem like we got a Scalia out of that group. It seems like we got 3 moderate to good justices. I don't think there's any catastrophes there. I don't think there's any suitors in this group, which is nice. But I don't know. When you're depending on now 3 or 4 justices that can let you down on a relatively consistent basis, it's hard. I mean, there's going to be some of these decisions that are not going to go our way. And man, that's a scary future. Yeah, Pat.
Why is it conservatives always do this on the Supreme Court? It's never the liberals that they appoint to the court. You mentioned David Souter, Sandra Day O'Connor, Anthony Kennedy. I mean, the list is pretty long when it comes to people we thought were going to do a great job and then really you couldn't rely on for good decisions. Whereas, they'll appoint a Sonia Sotomayor and she's solid for them. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I mean, they're never going to make conservative rulings. No. Ever.
No.
And it's just a bizarre situation. I don't know why it's always that, especially when we've supposedly got a majority in there. You would think they'd be influencing the other ones, not vice versa.
Well, I just think that, even extending this into SCOTUS, but I think that it's just an overwhelming matter overall, is that conservatives generally tend to think like, well, we have to be the moral ones and we have to have the compass and we have to, base our opinion on facts and truth and analysis. And the other side, meanwhile, is like, we don't care. We're just going to advance our agenda. Like that's just what we want to do. I mean, you think that all of these liberal justices, every single time a case is heard, they're looking at the Constitution? No. Of course not, because they don't care about the Constitution.
They look at case law.
Yeah, they look at case law. Yes, they look at case law, and even when there is no case law, or maybe sometimes when they are, they look at advancing their cause. That's all that they want to do, and it's so frustrating to see. I'm not saying go against the Constitution. I'm just saying, seems to me like the argument could be made that the Constitution says that the border should be secure, or that the federal government is in charge of that. So if the federal government has abdicated that duty, of course Texas has a right.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, I think you're right in that they look at the Constitution and case law as ways to reverse engineer the opinion they want.
Right.
And that's a real problem in almost every circumstance. And that's, I think, you look at the way this is now, and one of the big complaints when we were doing the show long before Donald Trump complaining about this stuff and complaining about Sandra Day O'Connor and Kennedy and Souter. And one of the big complaints for a long time among conservatives was the issue here is that liberals basically, it's okay to have litmus tests with liberals, right? Like they can come out and basically say, aren't you for Roe versus Wade? And they say yes. Trump really changed that dynamic because before Trump, conservatives would always be like, well, what do you think about issues that are important to areas that could concern the possibility of life? Like they wouldn't come out and say it. Trump came out and said, I'm appointing pro-life justices, right? Obviously, we got the most, maybe one of the most important Supreme Court rulings of all time in the overturning of Roe versus Wade that has paid dividends. And that has helped, I think, certainly in that case. But it's not a cure-all, right? I mean, I think these are justices that were picked largely by the Federalist Society, which is about as good as we have when it comes to conservative legal theory. You can give Trump a limited amount of blame and credit for what happens here because he really was picking off of a Federalist Society list. That being said, they'll probably be pretty good most of the time. It's just it's amazing that it's so hard to find an A+. They don't have trouble with that. Like, what's their big disappointment? Elena Kagan, who's a liberal on 98% of things instead of 100? Like, this is about as far as they go. And we're always dealing with like, I don't know. Here's a major important decision to be made, and we have no idea going in. I mean, Donald Trump is trying to stay on the ballot in these states. It's blatantly obvious he should be allowed to be on the ballot. There's no question to me whatsoever. He wasn't convicted of this crime. Like, there's 100 reasons why. Everyone knows them. But like, you go into these things and you're like, gosh, are we 100% sure they're not going to just say, well, we don't want him there? You know what I mean? You know you're going to get 3 votes for sure that will not allow him on that ballot. There's no way that you're going to get less than 3. Roberts, I mean, I don't know. He's an institutionalist. You'd think he'd be on the right side of this, but I mean, these are big cases, and the fact that we go into them often so unsure of how many votes we're going to have is a real problem.
Yes, Stu, you said earlier, obviously, like, you want 5, but really you need 6. I'm like, I don't know. I think you need 7.
7 or 8, yeah.
It feels to me like you need 7 at this point.
It'd be nice if we could get, like a Mike Lee, for instance, on the Supreme Court, Ted Cruz. That would be 8. Which would be good. Right. 8 to 1 would be great. Somebody would, I don't wish death on anybody, but maybe a couple retire on the liberal side. That would be nice. But it's difficult even now with the configuration of 6 to 3. It's still, like Stu said, up in the air, and it shouldn't be.
Right.
Shouldn't be.
Right.
We should be easily figuring out their decisions right now.
Yeah, it just feels like everything is just, we're not on what I would call stable ground here in this country. Is that overselling it? Is that overstating it? I mean, I feel very, very, very shaky, like almost like an earthquake is about to happen. Very, very unsettling, shaky ground that we are standing on literally every front. I can't think of one that I feel is like very secure. Like you could go like, oh, well, the Supreme Court, I feel confident in that. Or like the economy, I feel confident in that. I can't think of one. Can you?
No, really, the Supreme Court has been the only thing in between us and complete and utter chaos lately. And thank God it's there. It's been relatively decent. I mean, the student loan thing is a great example of it. I mean, we have a president of the United States who is outwardly ignoring the Constitution, going against it, going against what the Supreme Court previously said, and just getting himself slapped down over and over and over again. Luckily, but the courts are the only thing standing in the way. And this is the problem with the makeup of this court right now. You just don't know. You just don't know if they're going to hold the line on each one of these things. So far, most of them, they've been good, right? Like, I mean, there have been some disappointments, but most of the time they're going to be good. I just think that, like, when you're talking about issues that are this important, one of these times we're going to get let down, and it's going to be really, really damaging to the country. And I don't know when that's going to come, but it feels like it's always there. And we've been sitting here complaining about this for a long time. As you point out, it's probably the best we have when you talk about pushing back against the left. The Supreme Court is probably the best vehicle we have right now. I mean, the House is in flux. They barely have a majority. We don't have the Senate. We don't have the presidency. It seems like most of the Republicans in office don't do their jobs. You get the point.
More good news when we come back.
If you like that clip, there is plenty more where that came from. Click the link in the description below to subscribe to the News and Why It Matters YouTube channel to watch the full episode.